Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. For this week's Andor after show, it's our reaction to episodes 4 through 6 of Andor season 2, the second arc of season 2. We're going to talk about everything that happened in this week's episodes. And of course, it is full spoilers. So if you're watching this on replay or joining us live, make sure you've seen the episodes. You probably won't be able to get through them all tonight and then join us again because this is one of the longest weeks of Star Wars episodes we've ever had, but certainly a great set of content here to discuss. But we had 3 55-minute plus episodes with credits, so they all came in around 50 minutes without credits. So pretty long binge here for Andor episodes 4 through 6. So again, if you have not seen the episodes, we're going to be talking spoilers. So make sure you watch them, then come back and join our discussion. So I think we should start off first with a few channel updates as well. For those of you who joined us last week, we said we were experimenting with the format. We were going to try out 2 streams last week. We were going to do a Tuesday stream, and then we were going to do a Wednesday stream. Tuesday was targeted at the people like you and me and all of us watching in the chat right now, people who are anticipating the show coming out, or it doesn't matter what time of day it is, they're going to binge it, watch it, and want to talk about it right after. So that's what this show was targeting. The Wednesday show was supposed to be open to more people who want to discuss and didn't get a chance to binge it all the first day, or maybe were on a different part of the world and couldn't watch it. It was late at night for them. That stream didn't do great for us. We didn't get the numbers we were hoping for on that stream in terms of viewership. So for now, our plan is to just do these Tuesday streams. So hopefully, a lot of you who are seeing them the next day, you can join in on the conversation in the comment section. We're considering piecing out some of these parts of the streams and putting them in videos, some of the best talking points and stuff as well, to make it more easily accessible to our community to really enjoy the conversation around Andor. Because really, this, I mean, as great as it is to be able to binge an arc of the show every single week, it's not ideal for the discussion aspect with everybody. And so it's either, when do we really, discuss? Do we do it right after? And do we do it the day after? Do we do it a week after? Do we wait till the weekend when more people have seen it? So it's a difficult thing to really gauge. And it seems like enough of you are binging it and enjoying it on the night it comes out that we'll do these streams on Tuesdays, and we're going to make this one a full 2-hour stream like we intended to do for last week's Wednesday stream, which we did, pull down as well from the channel. It just was not a success like we wanted it to be, but that's all right. It was worth trying out. And so now these Tuesday streams will be the full of 2 hours. So we're going to do our review first. We're going to do our reaction review of the 3 episodes. And then we're going to turn it over to you guys for your questions, your comments, your theories, anything you would like to discuss. Send it into the chat. Chat is always first come, first serve. There are ways of getting around that. Super chat bumps you up to the top. We will answer all super chats before the streams end. And then, of course, if you join our Patreon or YouTube membership programs, if you're at the Rebel tier or higher, you get priority chat access. Either send a chat on the post on Patreon or comment here in the chat, and we will see and bump you up to the top. So make sure you do so. I started a poll here asking you guys what you thought of Andor season 2, episodes 4 through 6. What would you give it out of 5 stars? You can vote in that poll if you want to. We're not going to give it a full grade here until the end of the season, but it's always fun to interact with you guys and see what you guys are thinking every single week. I know last week's was a little bit more mixed for an Andor arc, at least. So it's fun to talk about that. This week was a little bit more traditional Andor arc, I would say, compared to season 1. So let's just get into the conversation now with all of that out of the way. And of course, also, guys, I'm going to remind you as well, check out our predictions videos. This week came out a little bit later, but it's going to be, we're trying to get in the predictions. I mean, 3 episodes to predict and a year jump every time. So it's a tough topic to specifically predict. But now as we get halfway through the show, we have more real grasp on where they're going and what they're going to do. So I think it's going to be even easier to predict a little bit more next week. But stay tuned for our predictions episodes. Those are still coming out every week. And if you didn't check out last week's, and even if you've already watched the show, maybe you want to check out, see what we had to say, see what we were right about, see what we were wrong about. All right, let's get into the episode now, or episodes. And this week we did have a very Gorman centric arc, which I was expecting, but I don't think I wasn't personally expecting it to be the entire backdrop of the arc. Like it was a good, pretty much every character intersected with Gorman at some point in this arc. And so I was not expecting that with Gorman in this episode, because Gorman Massacre happens. Spoilers for those people who don't want to know, but it's going to happen next arc because it takes place in 2 BBY from Rebels. We know that. So it is going to happen next arc. I'm assuming towards the end of next arc, and we're going to build up to it. But I didn't think we were going to really get boots on the ground in this arc. I thought we would see the thing definitely called was the Cyril and Dedra stuff, all the planning, the initiation, the infiltration into the Gorman people, setting up and staging those early revolts, trying to construct a resistance group basically out of nowhere, and really egg them on to the point where they will eventually, step up and give the Empire cause, at least Imperial cause, to start the Gorman massacre. We also found out about something called the Tarkin massacre, which took place a little before in the square as well. So the Gorman has been a planet that is no stranger to Imperial violence. And I thought learning about Gorman, setting all of that up, I thought it was a really smart move, because next week we're going to, obviously utterly destroy a lot of these people. And it was good for setting up the emotional arcs around that. So I thought that Tony Gilroy, they did a lot of great stuff there. Sonic, what were your thoughts overall on these 3 episodes, and what stood out to you amidst a lot of the things we were kind of speculating what this arc would be, and knowing what's coming next week? What stood out to you this week? I can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted or not.
All right. Well, one thing that I found very interesting as a decision uh, was you. I wasn't.
I think we lost you again, because I heard you for a second and I can't hear you now. Stand by, everybody. Sorry about that. We're getting it fixed up, but let us know again your guys' thoughts in the chat room. We will get to all your guys' questions, your comments, your theories, anything you'd like to discuss. Doesn't even have to be Andor episodes 4 through 6. If you want to speculate, talk about next week as well. That's always one of the fun parts about these live streams, is discussing all of that with you guys for next week. So send those chats in to the chat room and we will get to them. Again, join our Patreon, YouTube memberships. You can check that out. We do have plenty of perks for you all, so that you can have priority chat access, not on just this stream, but all of our live streams. We do news streams every single week when these streams are not happening, when new shows aren't happening. And another question I did want to bring up, well, waiting for Sonic to get his microphone fixed. I'm not sure if it's fixed yet or not, but
I'm good. I'm good.
okay, you're good now. But I will throw this out there as well. I was going to start a poll. We do have Tales of the Underworld coming out next week. How do you guys want us to cover that? I mean, we've done video reviews for Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi. Haven't necessarily been our most popular reviews, but do you guys want this last, 12 months or so? We've really made live streaming a big part of our channel. Do you want a live stream reaction to that? Do you guys want a live stream discussion to that? Let me know in the chat or the comments as well about that show. Okay, I'll pass it back to Sonic now. We've got the microphone fixed.
Yeah, so what was surprising to me, and hopefully my microphone holds up here, but, I think it was the Saw Gerrera usage, right? I always figured he was gonna be in the background. I always figured he was gonna have some scenes, but not necessarily that much sauce. Like, I mean, he is very much like, yes, he is almost terroristic. He's insane as a revolutionary, but he is also, like, not wrong in the sense that no revolutionary is really sane, right? Like, everyone is kinda off their rocker in some way. And to kinda take Wilmot into this plot was something I didn't really immediately see, like, I mean, it makes sense from where he is in season 1. He is the kid who at some point developed the pipe bomb, right? Like, from his need to avenge his father, right? Like, that's and it worked. It was very spectacular of an explosion in season 1. At some point, he's upgraded to maybe mastering everything that Salmon had taught him, but now he knows 8 variants and all this and that, and it was a very interesting choice to have him be continued in the story away from Bix and Cat, not necessarily just sidelined, like, to have him be our eyes and see how easily Saw Gerrera in some ways is charismatic, right? More so than he is, like, a revolutionary. Like, he's a great public speaker sometimes, and he leans on, like, those flaws, those cracks, those things that you find so obviously wrong about him, and he's like, "I know." And that's what gives me freedom, that's what gives me liberty, right? That's what gives me the hope that we'll see the republic that has once stood, right? So, seeing, a pipe, which is, like, traditionally in a lot of media kinda used as, like, symbolism for, like, a very dark but, like, very aggressive revolutionary act, right? Seeing that and then seeing how it ends with Saw Gerrera having him and Wilmon just cackling off of, like, essentially gas fumes, right? Like, they're just going crazy, like, they're getting high off their own product, they're going insane off of the revolution, and they're like, "Yes, breathe that in, drink that in," right? So that was pretty shocking to me because I figured partisan stuff, we'd see maybe them do something substantial that makes everyone react eventually by the next arc or make some adjustments in their infrastructure between Luthen, between Mon Mothma, etcetera, right? But just seeing those 2, like, kinda cackling and just very obviously affected by that chemical composition and just being free, that was not how I expected a partisan arc to go, but it is also exactly how it needed to go, like, you need to understand why these people have fanatical followers, why they have fanatical soldiers, and then to see in between all that, like, the paranoia that defines, the way that he works, and he's always a step ahead, like, why he's so successful, but he's also just so insane to see, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm still to this day kinda shocked that Forest Whitaker loves this role this much, but it makes sense when because every time he comes back, he's adding some new layer and this new mask or this new persona that isn't him exactly, but it always is a part of the sum of contradictions that is Saw Gerrera, and it's so seductive, right? It's so interesting to see that I mean, yeah, sure, it's the car, it's The Force Awakens all over again. I'm trying like, "Oh, 35 years from now, a big thing will happen here," right? Like, sure, I'm thinking all those things, but I was carried by, like, just, like, the symbolic Che Guevara kinda-esque, like, Latin American revolutionary, especially those that have been caught on film. They are very, very much aligned with a lot of cinema that we know today, and kinda just seeing how he dictates his own theatrical audience and then brings it home onto the fold, not out of choice, but out of necessity, and then from necessity to because, "Hey, this is what you were meant to live for. This is it," right? Like, and it works, and that I thought that was a fascinating but extremely powerful symbolism that was used all throughout, just to kinda have this theatrical performance that actually works on people while you're seeing Cassian and Luthen kinda discuss their characters and their jobs and how they're almost all so sick of it, but then here's this man he's invested in who he is to every single degree, and I thought that was fascinating. I think that's what makes one of the best additions to the Rebellion, period, since 2016, but, like, now they're, like the way you get to see Forest Whitaker chew up the material, go with, like, these unnerving but so pleasing tangents, that was great for me. So I found that almost, like, stealing the episodes for me despite, like, so much crazy stuff happening. Obviously, Gorman being very coded as, like, French Revolution not revolution, the French resistance of World War II and everything, like, you can kinda see the things that are, like, very much grounded in our real world, but I don't know, I don't think I see anything like the partisan stuff, like, even in, like, more, like, anarchist countries and stuff like that. That stuff was very powerful, but yeah, Gorman's stuff was very detailed, in a way that I didn't expect. The appraisals of situations, you get to see a little bit more of the command structure that Lupin has developed and now mastered by having someone just as competent or at least an enforcer out on the field. All that stuff was really cool to see Cassian's evolution and in some ways, like, stagnancy in who he is, what he's leaning on still obviously Bix. All that was very, very interesting. It is a very slow burn arc. I can see why this is gonna be the longest arc from the, like, leaked episode runtimes, but I think this is one that we'll see next arc immediately be like, "Yeah, that was worth it to understand everything happening and all that," so yeah, pretty big fan of everything that kinda happens here, and then we have Clea of all things, like that not a scene I would expect. I mean, she's always the character who's most composed, controlled, and everything, and then, yeah, how it happens, how it yeah, yeah, I mean, there's some really awesome things about this whole arc that it's just yes, go, you're plotting through every single detail, but then you just see, like, performance and, like, things unexpected, and you're like, "Wow." So, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one I have to sit on more than the first arc, but yeah, I think it was pretty dang good. It was pretty dang good. It raised the stakes, it set up everything it needs to for the next major run that we're about to go on here, and yeah, whatever happens here on Gorman, oh boy, it's gonna be well earned. It's gonna be well earned.
Yeah, I thought this was a marked improvement on last week. Last week's arc, while I appreciated it, I thought it was a way for us to get back into Andor, back into these characters, back into the flow of what's going on after almost an epilogue arc in a lot of ways from season one. And so there were things like the rebels that Cassian meets on Yavin 4 that just kind of detracted from the pacing a little bit, didn't really feel as much a part of the narrative, felt like they were, there to teach a specific lesson, but not necessarily something I think when you look at the end and the totality of Andor, you'll be like, oh yeah, that was a peak moment. So getting back to like everything kind of crisscrossing and setting up together all the different arcs, I thought that was, even if a little slower, even with a little less action than last week, still infinitely more interesting because we had every character dealing with something that contributed or piggybacked off of the next plot line. And every time you cut to different characters' POV, they all seamlessly flowed together. Whereas last week, it was a little bit more of catching back up with everybody and seeing what everybody's doing and initiating their plot lines so that they could get to this moment this week. And so I found this week really, really strong. It was definitely a lot of setup for next week. And next week it will go down. I'm very intrigued to see whether it'll be like second episode or it will be the big finale of the third episode because Mon Mothma was the one character last week. She was huge in last week's arc. This week, not as big. She didn't have that many moments. She had some good moments, but she almost played the Luthen role from last week, where it's like when she shows up, kind of crisscrossing with other people's arcs, bridging into the Luthen arc, bridging in to Vel's arc in some ways, asking about her and then cutting to Vel and Syntha. And that when she asked about Vel, I figured one of them was going to die, but I thought it was going to end up being Vel because of her asking about Vel. So I thought that Tony Gilroy did a good job setting up the fact that that misdirection because I definitely thought Vel was gonna die, and then they send her off. They're like, "Oh, you go do this," and she's like, "Okay," on her own. Yeah, it definitely seemed like she was gonna be the one to bite it. And I loved her speech that she gave after Syntha died. I thought that was really powerful, and these characters are all becoming realized. I mean, I would like to see a little bit more of Syntha before she went because she was one of the characters who was a little bit more in the background in season one. She had her strong moments, but Vel dominated that kind of side of the story. That dynamic, Vel was much more front and center, especially because of her relationship with Mon Mothma, the familial connection. So I wanted to see a little bit more of Syntha before she got killed, but I think the way she got killed, obviously, it's pretty impactful for the characters and it sets up the stakes of what's coming. And so I thought that was really well handled. I liked Cassian's part of the story too. I definitely enjoyed Cassian's stuff more than last week. I thought his relationship with Bix, this is the best it's been. You really establish a connection with them. If Bix is to die next week or the week after, I think they've done a really strong job of building up that intense passion and love and connection between the two of them. The way Cassian can go on a mission and come home to Bix, or Bix go on a mission and come home to Cassian, and then by the end of this arc, they're a team. And so I'm expecting them to be a team next week, and we'll see what the outcome of that is. Cassian's really trying to distance Bix from this. He doesn't want her involved, using her, the torture and the PTSD she suffered on Ferrix as kind of an excuse to keep her out of the loop, even if she is still experiencing side effects. He's very protective of her. He's let his protection down by the end of this arc. I'm sure that won't go well. I'm sure something's going to happen, but we'll see how that plays off on the character and what Luthen's direct involvement is. But I thought it was interesting when Cassian confronts Luthen, because one of the big things we kind of speculated on last week, the predictions video, was how much is Luthen losing control of the situation as things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And Luthen directly talks about that in this episode. He directly talks about how they have so many lines cast so many different places. He can't keep control of everything. Everything is starting to get scattered. They're not able to stay on top of it all. He doesn't really know what's happening in every direction. And I thought that was something that definitely needed to be addressed, but he still chooses and makes the decision to, instead of losing Cassian, chooses to say, hey, why don't we just kill two birds with one stone? I'll let you get your revenge on the doctor and simultaneously team you up with Bix. And then now you don't have to worry about her. You can keep an eye on her all the time because you guys are a team. And I thought that was a cool decision. I'm excited to see what comes from that. And the setup for that was really good. Luthen had some great stuff this week. Like you said, Clea had some great stuff. I liked seeing her more involved. And she does have so many great scenes in the first season, but here in the second season, you really see how much more intense even than Luthen she is. And there's some really great moments with her this week. Lonnie as well, another character to bring back and really give some more life and breathe some reasons into ultimately what I'm sure his demise will be at the hands of the Empire. I'm sure that's not going to go well. Krennic was definitely eyeing him this episode, so we'll see how that continues to play out in the ISB. And then the Dedra and Cyril stuff I thought was really good. Last week, as much as I enjoyed their scenes, I did feel like they were the ones that felt completely out of place with the rest of the arc. Every time we went back to them, it was my enjoyment of seeing those characters from season one that kept me in to their arc, but really had nothing to do with the main arc of the show, right? So getting them this week directly involved, seeing Cyril have more agency, that was something I wanted to see, and they did that. And I think they're definitely setting Cyril up to be this boots on the ground person in the Gorman Massacre, and probably won't go well for him. And we'll see how Dedra reacts to that, having such direct involvement with the massacre. But overall, I thought this week was really, really strong. Right now our audience has 56% saying 5 stars for the 3 episodes, 44% for 4 stars. I think I'm around that 4 starish range. Like, I thought this was a really, really strong week. Lots of stuff to chew on, a lot of really good moments, great character building moments, a lot of good setup, and I'm expecting next week to really deliver on it. I mean, in traditional Andor fashion, they have these 3 episode arcs and they usually deliver on the third episode, but almost in a way, it's like they have these 2 setup arcs now with the weekly releases of 3 episodes. Then they're going to have this big, huge climactic payoff arc. Then we'll see what the final arc is. But I'm expecting next week to be a little bit more rebel focused and a little bit more about the Gorman Massacre. But yeah, I definitely caught the French connections as well with Gore. The language is very French-esque. It sounded like
Yes,
French mixed with
yes.
a little bit of Eastern European languages or a little bit of
Yeah.
German. So that was I like that I always love when they world build, and so creating a language for Gorman, that was something that I always appreciate when you just try to create a culture within Star Wars and build up the different planets and different worlds instead of just saying, everybody can speak basic. I always love when they give different languages and different places have different ways of going about things and discussing things. So really enjoyed all that. But let's talk a little bit about the rebellion. And again, guys, send in your chats, any reactions you had, questions, comments, theories, anything you'd like to discuss this week. The stream will continue as long as you guys are sending in questions or comments. So if nobody sends anything in, we're probably going to have to wrap up after our review, but we'll keep it going as long as we can. But hopefully you guys have some reactions and stuff to send or predictions for next week. But let's turn the conversation maybe towards the rebellion, because that was something we talked about a lot about in predictions. The rebellion will begin next week. So we have the Gorman massacre starting next week. This week I was expecting a lot of focus on kind of the initial rebel groups. And while I think I was hit the nail on the head on that, it definitely wasn't as forward as I thought it would be. You know, I thought we would get a little bit more to the partisans mission. And when they popped up, I was like, okay, yes, this is exactly what I'm expecting. But then it is very much so in the vein of this week, a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue, and especially for those people who don't know Saw, a real representation of who Saw Gerrera is. And you really get under the skin of Saw and you just learn everything about him through a character that, we saw have this kind of simple desire last week to live with this girl he met and, kind of leave a lot of the stuff behind. This character's now fully in it after the events of last week, and Will is going to be now kind of a part of the partisans. But it's interesting, I think, when you look at it compared to what Luthen is doing. Luthen has really no control or real connection at all to the partisans. He sends. We're led to believe he sends Will there, but Saw's not afraid of Luthen at all, and he is definitely willing to burn that relationship in favor of just getting what he wants. Right now, he wants Will's skill set. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, comparing it to what Mon is doing, very Revenge of the Sith esque, building those initial, trying to find a solution in the Senate, I thought was a good place to send her, because I'm expecting a little bit more of that next week. And this was just the start. But yeah, then seeing the Cassian side, like Sanak, when you looked at all the things they're setting up for the eventual like coming together of the rebellion
Yeah.
next week, when Mon Mothma gives that speech, were there any specific groups that surprised you, or where do you think like the partisans are going to go in conjunction with that? Like, how is that all going to come together, especially with Gorman? Are the partisans going to end up being called in or somehow involved with some of the initial rebellion stuff there? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, we do have to assume at some point the partisans do become tied to the central narrative. I think without a doubt, especially like we said, there's so much window dressing from Rebels. We know that Mon Mothma interacts with Saw more than just, Reign of the Empire Mask of Fear says, right? We know that she's interacting this whole time with Bale, even if they aren't as close as we thought in 2016 when Rogue One came out. You can kind of understand like how they can work concurrently, how they can benefit each other, kind of cover for each other's weaknesses. That being said, not the biggest fan of Benjamin Bratt's look for Bail Organa. If you're gonna use the character, I feel like you could have CGI'd in Jimmy Smits or just skipped him entirely. I just thought it was like, why did this happen? But anyways, yeah, I don't know. I think the party have to become central. I don't know if they have to become central to Gorman though. Like, I think one big thing about Rogue One is just how much that Saw kinda becomes obsessed with the idea of the Death Star, like, in general, like, yeah, we're talking about a character who in just last episode, he's talking about, like, "Oh, y that's my sister, the Rydell," and I'm like, "Oh my god, that is a really messed up man." But he's exactly the type of guy who will connect all these different fractures together and make it more severe, right? So, once he starts and gets a taste of, like, oh, what's going on with Scarif and all these little nods and stuff to, like, just the physical things that have to occur, just the transportation, the connection, everything, for to make the Death Star happen. I think that's where he pops out more. I don't know if I would see him with the Gormans. I can see him be consulted and say something and everyone being like, "Why did we even bother?" But, I figured next arc, he'll be a little bit more established, the leadership will be kinda working together, fragile alliances or not. But I think he'll be like, "No, man, I have bigger priorities. I like, this is what needs to become my thing," right? And that's how I see the partisans, unfortunately. Like, yeah, I do want them more and more involved because they do have some great stories. especially, like, in the comics post Rogue One, like, there is a lot of cool things there. Inferno Squad obviously is a great Battlefront book too, so, they get a lot of insane development, but I don't know if they get their full development by being tied to Gorman. It almost feels a little too obvious to kinda throw them in as, like, "Here's total anarchy, here's total chaos, and here's how it's gonna be spun by Saw at some point." Like, yeah, I expect them to do that for everything. So, I just don't see that for me personally. Maybe in, like, a day or 2, it might change, but I don't see that. Um, but yeah, I mean, everybody else is gonna be connected. Cassian, I think, is gonna be involved, but it's gonna be more of like, okay, you have to start work with Mon Mothma, protect her, things are about to go down, she's about to unleash something, and then maybe that's now where the Mon Mothma Cassian influence can kinda start be dictated out. We always kinda assumed it would be, at least I assumed it'd be this arc where he'd be more Coruscant suave. Obviously, that wasn't the whole point of that character. So, the one who's gonna be, like, walking and talking with the exasperated Mon Mothma as things you hear less and less about Gorman, and then the more things that start leaking, and you just hear, like, old insanity happening, right? I think that's where you'll start to see Cassian and Mon Mothma angle shift from, like, like, watchful guard from Luthen to, like, "Oh my god, he just allowed a mouse into the lion's den and prepared him for
Mhm.
all the wrong things," right? Like, I can see that sort of dynamic be shifted out.
Well, that would be a good way to where if they wanted to do Gorman Massacre Episode 2 next week, you could have a fallout via Saw.
Yeah.
Not that Saw needs a reason to do anything. He and his partisans are completely self-motivated. They're gonna do whatever they want whenever they want. Um, but if he was looking for approval, right? If you have that Mon Mothma speech at the beginning of Episode 3 after the Gorman Massacre in Episode 2, and it's like, okay, it's one of those things of like once somebody big gives the okay for the rebellion to begin, once the official declaration of war by the Rebel Alliance starts, he can use that as a justification for just being like, I'm gonna go start a massacre of my own and I'll blame it on the Rebel Alliance, basically. And we know he burned bridges with them. So I don't maybe that's the case. Maybe he is like, "Hey, I've been wanting to attack this Imperial facility for a long time. Here I go. I'm gonna do it because we're officially, having a Rebel Alliance now. We have a figurehead. We have a group of people to put the blame on to get the Empire off my back. Now I can go do whatever I want, and, and they'll pay the price for it, not me, and we can just keep wreaking havoc. I'm interested also to see when he becomes stationed permanently on Jeddah, when
Yeah.
he has loses his leg, when all these different things happen that get this character where he is in Rogue One, because obviously he's one of the most important pieces of beginning of Rogue One, and to me, if there's anything in Rogue One that doesn't work as well as the rest of the film, it's the first act with Saw because it's so jumpy and it tries to introduce so many characters at once, and it doesn't necessarily take the time to explain who everybody is and what everybody's doing. It really uses that cold open to set up Saw as the guy who saved Jin, and that's why they need to go find him. But they don't really give you much else other than he's wacky. So, like, if they can use this season to show all of those things, whether it's arc 4 or something that happens at the end of arc 3, I think that would be really good for setting up his character because that's the like that first 35 minutes, 40 minutes of Rogue One are the weakest part of the movie. And if they're really trying to make everything in Rogue One better, that's one of the big things you could fix is giving Saw a clear transition from this is who he was at the beginning of Andor, this is who he is right at the end of Andor leading up to Rogue One. I would really love to see that. So hopefully they go that direction with him because I think he is such a meaty character. He can be used for far more than just the crazy rebellion guy, like right now he's set up as just the insane rebel. They can use him in many other ways that make him even more frightening and even more of a wild card, both for the politics behind the Rebel Alliance and for the early days of the Rebel Alliance. And even though we see him in Rebels, I think that would still work. He can't lose his leg next arc because of seeing him in Rebels, but he could lose it in the final arc, and next week could be the setup towards that. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. But you brought up another thing I wanted to talk about here. And again, everybody in the chat, let us know what you think about this as well. Benjamin Bratt, let's talk about him in full. So, like you said, I was definitely underwhelmed by his appearance in this episode. As soon as she said, "Oh, Bale," I was like, "Oh, here we go." And obviously, if this is it, there's no reason to recast him. So they specifically talk about in the interviews, Tony Gilroy and others needing to recast because of important scenes on Yavin 4. So I'm expecting some really important, meaty stuff with the politics of the rebellion on Yavin 4 in either the end of next week's arc or in arc number 4. I'm expecting to see a lot more of him next week because why set him up in this week's arc if you're not going to bring him back next week? Might as well just wait. Uh, but but yeah, I was a little disappointed in like physically how they made him. He didn't really look at all like Jimmy Smits. Like I'm okay with the face not looking like him. They're not going to be able to hide that unless they decided to just go full CGI face, which I would have also been okay with them doing because I was okay with it with Tarkin. Now Tarkin's a little bit different because the actor died versus Jimmy Smits is still alive. Um, and unless they did the CGI face, I was okay with a different face, but I think physically they could have made him look a little bit more like Jimmy Smits, both his height, his weight, um, his build, a lot of that type of stuff. But overall, it's like two lines from Benjamin Bratt so far, and like 3 shots. So I'm not gonna get too worked up yet, but we'll see by the end of it if it's one of those things that where they could have just put a double in and had, Jimmy Smits come in later and record his lines on a green screen because they're saying it was scheduling conflicts is the reason he's wasn't in it. I'm sure within the 2 years they were making this season of Andor, they could have found some time to have him come shoot some stuff on a green screen. So we'll have to see why they couldn't do that as opposed to recasting. But overall, jury's still out on that. But it is the episode 6 of season 2 of Andor is the one that rips the band-aid off for that and gives us our first look at our new actor for Bail Organa. But what were your thoughts overall on that, Sanak, and just kind of him appearing in this episode? I know you said earlier you didn't love the look, but what were your thoughts on him appearing in this episode and what it might mean for his appearances next week and the week after?
Yeah, I mean, I I do struggle more with the issue of the recast because the costuming, right? It doesn't really feel very Alderanian, right? It just felt like something that I would see like Bela Antilles from episode 2 have or something, right? Like or sorry, episode 1, like with that deleted ish character. It just I don't know, like, I think they've been so strong this season, especially with Mon Mothma's clothing and everything, but just generally, I do think they've made a nice balance of taking real world, like, iconography, inspirations, cultures, threads, and then made it Star Warsy, right? I thought they've done a good job there. I just don't see the point of changing it so drastically to something frankly kinda bare. Like, maybe the materials and everything were nice, but it just looked very standard to, like, stuff that we've seen, and I've never Bale to me is like a subtle fashion icon, like, he knows he's walking into a room and he's gonna be wearing something different, right? And it's does it work all the time? I'm not sure. I think there's a couple outfits I'm not, like, the biggest fans of in the prequels, but yeah, this was not something I'd expect in his repertoire. And yes, I'm looking at a picture of Jimmy Smits in 2016 next to Benjamin Bratt. Yeah, the circle beard's not exactly the same, and the hair is a little bit nicer, more flat for Benjamin versus a little bit more concave at the hairline. But, like, I can work with this if you give him, like, a little bit more of the flowier, more wavier, like, full body look that is very common in the Eldoranian clothing. It's about purity, it's about going with the flow, being connected with your surroundings and nature. Like, that's how their whole cityscape looks like. That's how their clothing looks like. Just having him have, like, a sash, I was like, Really? Like, that's it? Like, it felt like, okay, if you're gonna do this, if you really have to do this without Jimmy Smits, at least make everything else about the character something that anybody can walk into, right? Like, that'll be like, okay, like, it's not 100% what I'm thinking, but, like, I'm getting it, I'm vibing with it, right? So, yeah, I'm hoping he's at least wearing a little bit more padding or something, a little bit more richer material that lines up with more of his Rogue One appearance next time if he's gonna be on Yavin, because that's just not gonna sync right with me. Like, I can kinda work with this being like, "This is Coruscant Vale," but, I don't know if I can really work with the idea of it being like, "Oh, yeah, like, yeah, okay, that's a choice, okay, that's Vale 2 months
Yeah.
before Rogue One or something," and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a little tough, especially if we see Genevieve, like, kinda fully slip back into how she looks like in Rogue One, where she's very barefaced. She doesn't really have this insane Chandrilan, fashion wardrobe that she's been dominating
Mhm.
this whole season with. So, yeah, that's where I'm more frustrated. I'm not worried about Benjamin Bratt's ability. I think
Yeah.
he's an actor that every time I've seen him, I've been kinda impressed. I just don't see why, like, that would be the choice. It almost reminds me of, like, seeing Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, seeing all these, like, really annoying, pompous, costumes for the dance and the balls and all that, and then seeing, like, the 2 Indian people that have just, like, stapled on clothes, and I'm like, I know my culture, that stuff is a lot more intricate in design and heavier and not just like, "Oh, just a costume," right? Like, and it felt like Bale was walking into the scene here in a costume, not walking in as Bail Organa, senator from Alderaan, secret rebel leader working with Fulcrum at this time. Like, I didn't get anything to evoke that, and I would've even liked his animated look in Rebels. Just go for something simple and plain, maybe as, like, a indication of, like, just how much forward thinking Bill already is without saying it so outright. Like, that woulda loved that, but, I don't know, it just didn't work for me.
Yeah, that's fair too. I mean, I didn't really think about the fashion as much as the function of just the physical traits that to me don't like if you're gonna recast, it's one thing to recast and then have a different face because every person has a different face. It's just something you're gonna have to live with, right? But I think
Yeah.
physically they should try to make him look as much like Bale as possible. So not no shade thrown at Jimmy Smits, but he this Bale needs a little bit more padding. Um, but
Right,
Jimmy Smits is pretty
right.
big. He's tall, and he's
He's tall,
also
yeah.
he's more built. I mean, he's just got a little bit more meat on his bones, and so
Yeah.
especially when we look at the Rogue One version of Bale, I would have loved to see them kinda go with that. We've seen Bale a lot in this time period, and I'm okay with some differences in look with animation versus live action, right? No, it's not great, but whatever. That you can get over, but yeah, like you're saying, we are going to get in 2 weeks a Bale that supposedly is there right before Rogue One, and I'm hoping they do the requisite things to make his face look a little bit more disheveled like it is and gray like it is in Rogue One, give him a little bit heavier weight, give him just a look that looks like Jimmy Smits did in Rogue One. I think that's what they should do. Um, here, I think that's the main thing for me with Benjamin Bratt was just he doesn't look very big. And Jimmy Smits, when you see him walking on screen next to Ewan McGregor, next to Hayden Christensen, next to all these different actors in Revenge of the Sith. I just saw Revenge of the Sith twice this weekend on the big
Yeah, that
screen.
does not help.
He's yeah, he's as tall as Hayden Christensen. He's just slightly
Yeah,
smaller. He's a big guy, and Benjamin Bratt doesn't look very big in this scene. So I think those are just like the small things that you can add some height to him. You can add some padding in his costumes. Those are the small physical traits that I would have loved if they did. Uh, as opposed to just kind of saying, "Hey, it's Bale's Benjamin Bratt now. Here he is." That, especially when a character's been played by one actor the entire time for years, both in animation, live action, all of it. It's Jimmy Smits. He has brought this character to life for so long. his image has brought this character to life for so long, for 20 years. It would have been nice to like try to get it as close as possible. Jury's still out for me. Obviously, this was like I said, it's like 2 minutes at most. It's about 5 shots, and we don't get much of him, and it's dark and whatever. So it's not much of a scene to really jump on. And again, no matter what they do, even if they don't do a good job with Bail Organa, it's not going to really change my opinion of the show overall, the quality of the show, because I'm sure it will not be very impactful to the narrative. But it is just one of those things that Andor's done such a great job of being so different and being so Tony Gilroy, but also being so incredibly Star Wars in its design and its look and its the way it brings characters back from all the other mediums, the way it references important plot points, so far as to make basically a plot point from Rebels one of
Right.
the core parts of season two. They've done all that work, and then it comes down to like one character that we all really know and love, and they're like,
Yeah.
here we have to do this. And I just don't I don't they the two reasons they gave, money and time, I don't buy really either of them unless there are really juicy meaty scenes where the two where he and another actor has to play off of each other. So I'm really hoping for that. That will be the thing that makes me go, I'm glad they recast if they couldn't get Jimmy Smits, because those moments were worth it. But if it's just he's standing around in a council and everybody's having a conversation around the hollow table on Yavin 4 and he says a couple lines, that's going to be a little disappointing because they absolutely could have
Yeah.
green screened Jimmy Smits in and just had him come for a day or two on a set in LA or wherever he lives. And, I'm sure he wouldn't have cost that much compared to, like, bringing back Harrison Ford or something, So if you got Harrison Ford for The Rise of Skywalker for 5 minutes, I think you could get Jimmy Smits back for Andor for your Emmy-nominated show. But, yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
see how that plays out. Did you have something else you wanted to add to that?
I just I'm gonna give it a chance. It feels like Conquest in, like, the second last episode of season 3 of Invincible, and I'm just like, "What? Ooh, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like the voice I had reading those comics." And then you see the actual full performance, and you're like, "Okay." Like, it just feels a little bit better. You could see little moments of, like, the deeper
Yeah.
treble that you're expecting the bass to kind of be richer at points, and then unexpected things you're like, "Oh, I didn't see that happening," right? Like, that's what I want from Benjamin. I don't want him to just be like, "I'm just playing Benjamin Bratt, who's playing Bail Organa, a character that Jimmy Smits fully embodies." Like, I don't want that. I want him to be like, "Okay, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna give something that, like, if we see Jimmy Smits play the role again, people kinda wanna see his, like, way of incorporating that." Just like how we saw Hayden
Mhm.
incorporate everything Matt Lanter did, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
now a very strange, sort of not transition, but maybe transition into this version of Bail Organa. It's happened, it's here, but now let's see if there's a couple of, cards up their sleeve and see if they've really got a role for this character that, at the end of the day is maybe a episode max. I feel with how season 2 is laid, but one that feels like, "Yeah, no, I'm glad that we got to see. I'm glad and I'm surprised by what we got." I wanna be surprised by the Benjamin Bratt, version of Bail Organa to the point that I see Bail Organa once he says something or does
Mhm.
something. Like, that's one thing that helped Alden for me, for Han, I know people are like, "Oh, he doesn't really look like him," and all that. But then you see a deep fake, and you're like, "Oh my god, he got the mannerisms 100% right. He got
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
little tiny quirks and all that." I wanna see Benjamin incorporate some of that and show something new. This is your chance, this is your stage.
Absolutely. I agree with all that. And I think, you know, we've been very vocal about recasts on our channel. For those people who haven't joined on our channel before, we've been very vocal about recasts where it's like they're inevitable when you have a long running franchise like this. So I get more and more okay with them every day, especially when logistically they're just impossible, like a young Han, Luke, or Leia. Like it would be for any actor who passed away, replacing a character for an actor who passed away. Like it's inevitable at some point that you're going to have to recast these characters if Star Wars is going to be a very long running franchise, and it is. Like Disney has no intention of not making more Star Wars. So at some point, unless you just completely move on, from what is core Star Wars, you're going to have to recast. But this is one of those like doesn't need to happen moments. And I think those are the types of things that are just like when you have an inevitable recast, it makes I think everybody can get over it at some point with time. To me, it's always been a time thing, like, having 20 plus years with Hayden Christensen and Darth Vader, you know, now they feel more like the same character than they did 20 years ago when you saw them for him play Darth Vader for the first time. Ewan McGregor feels more like Alec Guinness because you sat with him. Like it feels like Obi-Wan all as one character because you sat with him for a long time. Alden, if they would have given him more and you just got used to seeing him on the screen more as Han
Yeah,
Solo, he would have started to feel like Harrison Ford's Han Solo and Alden's Han Solo were the same person. And so to me, it's all about time. If Jimmy and I wouldn't really want this, but if Jimmy was like, I'm retiring from acting, I don't want to play Bail Organa anymore, and they wanted more Bail in the future, if Benjamin Bratt wants to keep coming back for the next 10 years, then you'll start to feel like they're the same person and it will,
yeah,
feel like there was a purpose to it. But if it is just like we wanted to acknowledge Bale existed, so we wanted to put him in for a couple scenes, but he doesn't do anything of significance, then that's where it starts to feel like, okay, what's necessary versus unnecessary recast? Because it's just one of those things that, especially in fantasy and sci-fi, you want to be completely immersed. It's one of those things that pulls you out of the immersion for a second, especially for hardcore fans. I'm sure for 99% of the world, they're just going to be like, oh, I remember that name, Bail Organa, but they're not going to remember, who he was or what he looks like. Although with so many people seeing Revenge of the Sith this weekend, which was awesome, second highest grossing movie of the weekend, $25 million. I love that. But with so many people going to see Revenge of the Sith, maybe they are going to be like, wait, I just saw that this weekend and that doesn't look anything like Bail Organa. And then they're going to do some research. But yeah, it's one of those things. We'll have to wait and see. Let us know what you guys think in the comments and in the chat. So we've been going for about 50-ish minutes or so, and the chat doesn't seem to be getting any more lively. So I think we'll bring up some more topics here, but unless you guys have something to stay, we can't keep this going forever. So keep sending in those chats if you have them. JJ Skywalker says, "Yo, what's up, JJ Skywalker? Hopefully you enjoyed Andor if you got to watch it." I kind of thought with this week being a longer episode, it would, you know, a lot less people will probably have seen it immediately. But again, it's one of those things, guys. This is such a weird release strategy. It's so different from anything any of us have really experienced. Whether it's commenting on this live after you've watched it, whether it's putting it in the chat right now, if you guys have a preferred time, a preferred day to talk about Andor together, because we just want to talk about it with all of our fans. More so than anything, we want our discussions to be able to be involved with what you guys are thinking and hear what all of you are saying about Andor, because this is such an anticipated and exciting show. We want to hear what your guys' thoughts are. So if there's a day or a time or anything that you guys would prefer for Andor season 2 reactions, or if you want us to come back again on the weekends or whatever it is to give you guys time to watch it, it's we're up for experimenting because this is such a strange release strategy. So we definitely want to talk about it with y'all. But we're going to keep trying to plow through here. So there were a few other things that I wrote down on my notes that I thought were interesting. One of them was the Senate. I've been asking who's in this middle pod for so long. It's just a little scene, but it was the Oath Keeper who apparently comes in and they say like almost like the Pledge of Allegiance that we say at school and here in the United States before class, or the Star Spangled Banner before a baseball game. They all say this oath about the empire, and he gets to stand in the emperor's pod, which I found is interesting. But yeah, a unique little character to add there were some new or very different alien designs in this arc as well. Some of them I didn't love. Like there were a couple people Mon Mothma was talking to that I were like, that's kind of like borderline humanoid, but just looks like a
mm,
inflated human. Like I forgot who she was talking to somebody, and I was like, "Ah, I don't really love that alien design." I can't remember. I don't think it's ever been in Star Wars before. Maybe it's in the background or something, but I just did not really like that one that much. But there were some things like that that stuck out to me. Also, I got to rewatch the scene from that moment as well. But there was the scene where they're walking down the hallway. It looks like there's an Ithorian senator, and it also looks like he has like a mouth that's like opening and closing. I couldn't tell if it's a Ithorian or not, but that also is like, I'm like, he doesn't, they shouldn't have a mouth. It should be on the side, you know. So just like some small things that I was looking for, but obviously minor nitpicks. But the one like big new lore thing that was introduced here that I wanted to talk about, even though we do get kind of information around it, is this Tarkin massacre and when it could it have taken place. Like, does it take place in between the last episode and this episode? Because they don't, I don't remember them mentioning it in episode 1 unless I didn't write it down, but I don't remember them mentioning it in episode 1, and it doesn't seem like the Empire has a significant presence on Gorman until this episode, and we see them start it last episode. I couldn't find anything on Wikipedia or anything about the Tarkin massacre when I looked it up during the episode, so I wanted to make that a talking point for tonight's show. But we did learn it was a massacre of 500 peaceful Gormans by Grand Moff Tarkin when he was trying to land his ship in the square, and he just took everybody out. So, I mean, it's very Tarkin, but it also seems kind of interesting, you know, comparing it to what the ISB is trying to do now. I mean, obviously, the ISB keeps distance from everybody. They don't really inform everybody of their plans. Krennic is probably the only person who knows exactly what's going on in terms of higher ranking Imperials outside of the ISB, what they're trying to set up here on Gorman for their ultimate goal of farming Calcite. But yeah, I thought that was interesting to add this additional massacre on Gorman. That's like a prelude to what's going to be even worse next week. But Sonic, what were your thoughts on the Tarkin massacre and its introduction this week?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's set between the first and second arc because I think that would have been enough for Mon Mothma to go like, "Okay, I'm firing on every cylinder." It seems like it happened fairly early on, right? Because in Legends, Garmin Massacre apparently is in 18 years before Battle of Yavin, so 15 years
Yeah.
before. So it's so different. And then it's kinda being continued into Andor, and they're like, "Okay, are they leading into that scene where Tarkin lands a ship? Is he gonna land a ship, Star Destroyer or something like that?" But now they're saying, like, no, like and I guess the one of the citizens in the subtitle says it was 16 years ago that Grand Moff Tarkin killed 500 peaceful unnamed Gormans. So, it seems like just after Revenge of the Sith, it seems like that definitely lines up with, like, a lot of Bad Batch's depiction of Tarkin too, of just kinda like things are early, things are new. I can kinda do these things, before, like, ambivalence and bureaucracy kinda fills in the gaps. So, it works for me. I like that they're still, like, trying to respect that Legends version of it. There's
Yeah.
just a lot of things that are bombastic about any of the original trilogy characters when they're fleshed out in the EU. So I don't mind this, honestly. I like the idea that a younger Captain Tarkin before he became a full-on Moff and all that. Like, this was, like, one of his first, like, terrorizing acts, and this is something that he also almost has his own time to reflect on before taking ownership of the Death Star, right? Like, it all kinda works for me there. So I'm not upset at it. I think that gap being 16 years, I think really works too, because if it was just, like, 3, 4 years before, like, things would be fervent. People would be on the streets doing more than they are right now, so and, I think it works. It's not ideally something I'd want to have where you have kinda 2 Gorman massacres, one is Legends, one is canon, and they're just gonna be both very different, but we're gonna respect it by changing the Legends one. I say inspire more than just straight
Yeah.
up adapt. That's kinda what it feels like here, but I can live with it. I think this will be something when we finally see the Gorman Massacre with the intricacy that's been laid out, with the role Cyril has, with how Dedra's working him from the scenes, what Cassian has already done and Luthen's observations, what the front themselves are doing, their failures already, like, just the case in point here with killing us Cinta because you're just stupid and you can't handle a drunken man that has a blaster that he can pull away from you. Like, yeah, it's like, it's gonna be very interesting to see how every single tangent happens here, and I want to see just how much like Krennic's really gonna shape the massacre, which I think is also very interesting because it's always been like Krennic's are kinda more the blue collar equivalent of Tarkin. Like he's gonna come in there, it'd be a little rough around the edges, but gets a job done. He's still intimidating. He's still got all that fire and ire in him, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I would go for that.
Yeah, that
But yeah, that's how I'd say it.
well, that's I think that's pretty interesting because it's very Andor-esque to do that in the sense that like you're giving credence to something that was by adding a new dimension to it. So basically, they're just renaming the Gorman Massacre from Legends the Tarkin Massacre and putting it back in because it was changed for Rebels, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it serves a similar purpose. So I kind of like that. I like it as an Easter egg. I liked it as a setup for that. But yeah, I didn't catch the 16 years thing. So but I did know that the Gorman Massacre in Legends was way earlier from it was from like I think one of the Star Wars Adventure Journals, which I cover so often in my short story section of the complete Star Wars Legends timeline, which you guys should check out on our channel. So very well versed in all those short stories, and I think it's pretty cool to give credence to that early Legends version. I always love when they do stuff like that with Easter eggs, but yeah, definitely pretty neat. But that's pretty much everything that I had pulled out of tonight's episode. So again, guys, this is your last call for comments about Andor season 2. We do have a couple comments in the chat. We did want to keep the stream mostly Andor season 2 focused, but we'll answer some of these comments if you guys do have any questions, comments, theories, anything you'd like to discuss about Andor or any other Star Wars topic. We'll open the doors here for you all. But again, let us know in the chat or if you're watching this on replay in the comments whether you would prefer a different day for the Andor reactions. Last week seemed to have a lot stronger audience participation than this week. So we just want to make sure we pick a day that y'all can enjoy it. Otherwise, we'll just do a review and call it a day. So let us know in the chat or in the comments. All right. So in the chat, Brandon Tran says, "Have you guys read the Revenge of the Sith novel? If so, where would you rank it amongst the EU books?" So I have read the novel. It's very tough for me because I feel guilty ranking Revenge of the Sith very high because it's a story that I read after I saw the movie, years after I saw the movie, and the movie has always been like my favorite movie of all time since I saw it when I was 7 in May of 2005. So it's like one of those things that just any version of it I'm instantly kind of in love with. So I always feel weird about ranking a novelization super high. I think if I was ranking individual Star Wars books, I'd probably put it number 2 of all Star Wars books. But when I rank like series and everything, I just did a full top 10 on my other channel. If you want to check that out, it is in the link of our top 10s and the rankings here on Star Wars Lads as well. I put it a number 4 there because I was including all series and trilogies, and it's just kind of weird for me putting it any higher than like the 3 Star Wars EU book series that I consider like the gold standard, which would be, Plagueis, Bane, and Thrawn trilogy. Those things I think are all like gold standard of how to do original EU stories. But Revenge of the Sith, considering it's not an original story, I have a hard time ranking over those. But if I was being honest and like no restrictions to my list, and I was just ranking individual books, I would still put Plagueis as my favorite. But I'd put Revenge of the Sith as number 2. I think it's a phenomenal book. I'm only holding it back just a little bit because I just love Plagueis so much as an original story.
Yeah, I would say top 5. It's been a while since I've read it, but I deeply enjoyed just everything that Stover managed to take from the shooting script, from conversations with George and all that. Like, this is gonna be so awesome to read again at some point and hold the actual physical copy of this deluxe, which is, by Star Wars standards, it is up there. This is like
Hmm.
pretty prestigious, and this is not like a third party kinda coming in and doing it. This is straight up from Disney being like, "Yep, we know you guys love Revenge of the Sith. Here's a little bit more for you," right? And it's like, it's the one that should be celebrated even more so than in the movie, I'd say, at some points, because it is, a very deep and enriching read. Like, I always still think about the conversation that Padme and Anakin have, and just how much more richer it is about, like, his struggles with the Jedi, with their relationship, with their future. Like, it you see a guy at the crossroads in that book in a way that you don't need the Clone Wars for. Like, I so much of Revenge of
Mhm.
the Sith for me ever since have Clone Wars began, it colors no matter what how you look at Revenge of the Sith, and it makes it better. It just straight up does, right? But Stover did that without any of this stuff. Yeah, maybe some stories or just some ideas that George floated to him, the shooting script, but that's it, right? So I think it's a fascinating book. But like Liam said, it's an adaptation. It is just trend to do you really kind of release those other medium adaptations of movies and stuff like that. It doesn't really exist today anymore because everything is in our hands, on our phones. So yeah, it's something that if it weren't an adaptation, it'd be like 1 or 2. It's the fact that it is, I have to keep it more like top 5.
Then Brandon also says, "What scene from the Revenge of the Sith video game would you wish made it into the movie?" For me,
Mm.
I always have wanted to see more Anakin Nightfall stuff, more Order 66 ever since I played that game back in 2005. Just because it's so just the idea of Anakin taking on armies of Jedi, like, the entire temple. I always wanted to see more of that. So, I don't know if I'd say one specific scene, maybe a little bit of, like, a slightly extended version of the Syndralic fight or something in there. Something that would've shown a cool kind of staging ground for the Anakin dueling, besides just, like, the only time we see Anakin in Nightfall is him murdering younglings. Um, I would have loved to see something else, but the scene works so well in the movie, in that montage, the way George montages all of the Jedi dying throughout the galaxy in Order 66 with Nightfall, with the Bail scene, with the initial start of Nightfall, him walking up the steps, John Williams music, all that stuff. I wouldn't change the scene to add it, but I've always just wished there was like a deleted scene that showed like the entire battle or like a 20-minute sequence where he's taking on a bunch of Jedi. Like ever since playing that game, that's been the main thing I've wanted to see.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that's definitely one of the highest contenders just to see Nightfall, not child murderer, right? Like, that's kinda how the scene plays out, like, yeah, it's got a great march, and then that's, like, your next shot, like, you don't have to love Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it's sad to say that it's a bit of a step up to see Anakin just simply kill almost think he killed a child, than to actually see the implication and all the bodies on the ground, like, it really isn't his best look, he goes full send there, but the game is like, "No, like, this is part of, like, an official act of the emperor or soon to be emperor. This is, like, him fulfilling and closing every loose end, right? So, yeah, the sin drawing stuff, of course, I'm always a fan of Sarah Keto. I miss that, I will say, kinda wish there was a little bit more of just, like, the weirder just Jedi pairings that were just more kinda born out of, like, the '03, the Clone Wars initiative and just some things like that. So, yeah, I'm a little disappointed in that sense, that we never got some of that stuff. I also think the Obi-Wan stuff, when he goes and reprogram the Jedi Temple, like, I don't know if I necessarily need my lovable ninja slicer, uh, clone troopers, where they're just annoyingly too
Mhm.
fast, but with, like, their sprites tricking you. I hated that level as a kid, I did. But, uh, yeah, I wanted to see a little bit more of, like, him making his way through because even in the movie, right, yeah, they're chopping off stuff and all that, and now with the further context of knowing Ahsoka's like, "No, I can't do it to them. They're people. I won't chop them down," and you can imagine the other side of the galaxy, Yoda's just yeeting his lightsaber straight into people's chests and all that, and you're like, "What? Okay." And then immediately it's like it's the reprogramming. That's kind of it. Like just a couple other like exploratory shots of like the aftermath and then that. Like I don't know. Like I'm not saying I love the idea of like how like the Lego Star Wars and I think the movie was supposed to just have the clones wear like the Jedi cloaks outside and pretend, that they're like Jedi just gathering around.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I need that, but I wouldn't mind a little bit more obstacles, a little bit more complexity, more of a dive into like what's uncovered tearing down a millennia old institution quite literally, right? So I wish we got to see a little bit more of that. I would love seeing like characters like Jocasta Nu and all that just pop up here and there. Some cool battles like the drawing Saraketo stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think the game does everything it needs to and just gives you some expanded versions of the story that the film delivers well enough.
Yeah, that I think there is actually a deleted scene of that Clone Wars, the clones in the Jedi robes, which is kind of a fun one. That makes me always think of Lego Star Wars.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of too many other things in the game that I would have loved to see directly translated. I mean, they do the one of many Shock T deaths, but then that officially
Yes.
became not Legends after she was brought back in uh, Force Unleashed.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that was retconned, and then um, other than that, well, the one I again not going back to Nightfall, but I did always love how Nightfall starts in that game, where he kills Jocasta Nu, and he like
Yeah.
grabs her with the Force and throws her and impales her with a lightsaber. Like that was
Yeah.
just that was classic. I played that level too many times just because I thought it was so cool getting to fight other Jedi
Yeah.
and just have like lightsaber duels with so many
Yeah.
different people. That would have been awesome to just see in the movie. But I do think it would have, I mean, would have completely changed the way George went about that sequence. So I don't know if I would actually change that scene, but I would have loved to see at least a deleted scene of it. But yeah, I can't think of anything else from the game other than maybe a deleted scene as well of like the what if from the end of the
Yeah.
game when you play as Anakin. That would have been kind of fun, but as a novelty. But it wouldn't have obviously been canon. So that could have been fun.
Yeah. It's nice though that the game does let you actually run through, like, the 2-hour plan sequence for, like, the invisible hand or, like, the hour or whatever mark
Mhm.
was supposedly in that original cut of the film, the production cut, so, yeah, like, jumping into those, like, electrified sewers with, like, those droids and all that, like, it was just nice seeing them, like, tear apart the whole ship, and then you realize, "Why are they taking this much time to tear apart the ship just to make them do something stupid?" And for some reason, narratively, that just works a lot better than having them, like, work their way all the way up to the bridge. It's like, "Yep, they just got caught. R2's hot wired." Like, it's more hilarious, but it's effective. But I will say it was funner to experience just more different things and all that. Like, I didn't need to see, like, deleted scenes of them, like, making, like, droid noises and, like, all that stuff like we see in the cut shots, like, "Oh, no, like this plan," and then they make funky noises. But, a little bit more of, like, just them working together in the camaraderie as they're going floor by floor, basically, up to the Palpatine and rescuing him.
Yeah, that would have been fun to see some of that stuff come out as well. But yeah, I can't think of really anything else that I would add directly into the movie. It- I love the movie too much to really add too many other things. But yeah, I think that's gonna have to wrap up our stream tonight, guys. If there's nothing else, again, last call for questions, for comments, anything you'd like to discuss. But it seems like this week we had less people join than last week. Could be a combination of a couple things. Obviously, these were a lot longer episodes, so no, not shocking that maybe this time didn't work for all of you. Next week, we can say from the leaked run times, they've been pretty accurate so far, maybe off by just a minute or two. The next 2 weeks are all around the 45-minute each episode mark with credits. So they're going to be about 40 minutes ish, 41, 42 minutes ish without credits. So they should be a little shorter. And I'm assuming a little more action packed. So we're going to plan on doing this again next week at this time. But again, for those of you joining us right now, for those of you in the chat, if there is a time you prefer or a day you prefer, if it's the weekend, if it's Thursday after you got a couple days for you to get a chance to watch the episodes, if it's still immediately after and you just didn't get a chance to watch them this week, let us know because the point of these lives is to discuss with all of you. Otherwise, we can just make a review and call it a day. So we want to make sure you guys get a chance to discuss with us and that we're not picking times and days that don't work for our audience. So let us know in the chat, in the comments, what works best for all of you. We want to try to accommodate you guys as much as possible so that we can enjoy basically our only major Star Wars release for the rest of the year with you guys. And again, like I said at the beginning, Tales of the Underworld comes out this week. May the 4th is Sunday. So would you guys like a live stream covering that either Sunday or Monday, maybe? Would you like it incorporated maybe with next week's Andor? We could talk about it after the Andor discussion. We could do it a different day. Let us know if you want a live stream for that. We've been doing live stream kind of reactions for almost everything recently. So it's another weird one. Obviously, full drop one day, but the episodes will only be about 15 minutes each. So it'll be a lot easier to consume. I think we still will do a review for that no matter what. So if you'd rather just see the review only, then you can check out our thoughts there. If you want to join us for the live stream, let us know for that as well. Keep checking out our videos and our shorts every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then videos usually come out at least every Friday. But with predictions, the videos this time, the schedule's a little different. So keep an eye out. Predictions will be out every week. We'll still have 2 more predictions videos covering the 3rd and 4th arcs of Andor. If you didn't check out our predictions video last week, you can check it out still if you want to, even if you've seen the episodes, see what we got right, see what we didn't get right. We will also have some other videos out for you all here soon. May the 4th is right around the corner, so hopefully you guys have a great Star Wars day if we don't talk to you by then. And again, thank you so much for watching tonight, everybody. Those of you who did join us, and those of you who didn't, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will see you next week.